Greetings, I'm the Guardian. Today, let's talk about the energy processes flowing inside black holes and the global role that these objects play on the scale of the universe. And so, the black hole. This is the cosmic body that is the portal in parallel measurement. As is known from science, a black hole sucks in itself surrounding matter. Getting inside this space, the physical substance does not disappear, but it drastically changes its properties. The peculiarity of the matter of the black hole is its maximum density. It consists of atomic nuclei closely adjacent to each other, and the electron shells are stripped from the atoms as they compact. That is, the building material for building a black hole. These are heavy elementary particles. Light particles such as electrons leave the black hole while the substance is moving inside the portal, and it literally burns free of all excess. Because of this, the black hole is perceived from the outside as an unusually hot body like a star, but in fact it consumes more energy than it radiates. The flow of energy coming into such a portal together with matter is spent on breaking energy ties. The rest of the energy expended for the destruction of the structure of matter remains inside the black hole and is accumulated by it. Your scientists observing black holes cannot understand what their real size is. They can only see the zone absorbing light radiation. Nevertheless, this dark halo around the black hole does not correspond to its size. It only indicates the limits of its influence on physical reality. The size of such a physical body is much smaller than the diameter of the opaque sphere surrounding it, and this massive body can be considered the core of a black hole that determines its properties. The more this core, the more mass a black hole has and the more actively it absorbs the surrounding space. However, in parallel with this, the reverse process occurs. The nucleus of a black hole is constantly bombarded by new particles entering it and partially evaporated by heating. The more massive the black hole, the more actively it is destroyed, so not every such object can build a significant mass. In general, there is the most optimal size of a black hole that allows it to maintain a balance when its growth rate is balanced by the evaporation of its surface. However, you may have a question. How does a black hole balance itself if it absorbs much more energy than it gives? From the point of view of physics, this is explained by extremely energy-intensive processes occurring inside the nucleus of a black hole associated with the condensation of matter. At the same time, the compaction process takes place due to the huge pressure of the surrounding space, which literally falls on a black hole and ensures the collapse of matter. In fact, a huge mass of a black hole. This is the only and sufficient condition for the densification process to proceed, since the massiveness of this body provides a colossal force of gravitational attraction, which in turn supports the dispersal of the substance of the portal going inside. These arguments may lead to the idea that the energy falling into a black hole should not simply accumulate. Otherwise, the system would sooner or later come out of balance and explode like a neutron star. Nevertheless, according to observations of astronomers, black holes do not explode. They can only gradually dissolve if their growth rate is lower than the evaporation process. It turns out that the energy system of a black hole maintains a balance. A significant part of its energy must leave it. But since this energy is practically not radiated outward and cannot be constantly stored inside its structure, the conclusion suggests itself. This flow goes into a parallel dimension. It is worth noting that any physical process is carried out at the expense of two types of energy, material and emotional. Both types of energy act together, but they manifest themselves in different ways. The material component of the energy flow is its driving force. Similar to fuel, it also serves as a building material. Your science is studying exactly this kind of energy, and according to these concepts it is possible to draw an equal sign between matter and energy. The energy of which the atom disposes is composed of the kinetic energy of its electrons, as well as the potential energy of mutual attraction of the particles that determine its structure. That is, the structure of a substance is determined by the amount of its internal energy, and precisely the set of phenomena occurring in space depends on the energy potential of the objects interacting with each other. The matter observed and felt by man is a condensed energy, which from a variety of variants of its manifestations has chosen a clearly defined, which has become its external form. In the ideal case, the energy enclosed within an individual atom could manifest itself in an infinite variety of variants, but maintaining the structure of this particle of matter, it is in a bound state. We can say that material energy is a non-free energy that is allowed to develop only according to clear physical laws. If our reality were based only on this kind of energy, then all processes would be completely predetermined by an invisible force that formulated the main physical laws and expressed them in the form of mathematical formulas. From the standpoint of classical science, this is really so, and the entire universe observed by man can be described with the help of already developed rules. Many physical processes are really amenable to a logical justification, and therefore the materialistic concept is universally recognized. But now let's consider the energy system of the universe from a humanistic perspective, that is, compare it with a living being and try to understand what it feels. Like many biological organisms, the substance that makes up its body evolves according to clear patterns, which means that this being literally does not have freedom of choice. Physicists and astronomers studying the structure of the universe are somewhat similar to biologists who have information about patterns of behavior of animals and plants, and on the basis of this information are able to predict their actions. Despite the similarity of the universe to the biological organism, there are also obvious differences between them. The actions of any living being cannot be fully anticipated, and although the outcome of his physical life is usually predetermined and ends with death, no biologist can confidently state how the object he is researching will behave in the next moment. Of course, the plant will continue to drag on to the sun with time and will build up the biomass, and the mouse in the labyrinth will search for the way to the delicacy placed inside it. Despite the general desire of biological organisms to satisfy their needs, the plant, during its development, will formalize its body in a unique form peculiar to it. Similarly, the mouse, despite the hunger imposed on it by the instinct of survival, can get carried away by an unusual move in a labyrinth different in color from the other corridors. The curiosity of this creation will direct it not at all to the place where the edible reward lies, but in return the mouse will feel an unusual burst of energy as a result of satisfying its deeper need for new impressions. In fact, any living thing is like a mouse. Every moment of time is faced with a choice, to continue acting according to clear laws described by science or to rely on one's own desire. Usually the desires of a living being coincide with the needs emanating from his instincts, and then this individual merges with the general background of physical matter and acts with it together. However, in many cases there are contradictions, and they are most noticeable in people's lives. According to materialistic ideas, mankind is a biological species that has transcended the limits of the natural environment, but has built another system. A social one. Social laws are an analog of natural laws, and from this point of view the life of every person is completely predetermined. Nevertheless, every single person seeks greater freedom in order to be able to make his own choice. It is the ability to choose from a set of options offered by the society that allows a person to manifest his or her individuality. Although the set of such opportunities for self-realization is limited, this range of development paths is needed for each person to self-manifest. At first glance, the desire for self-development is determined by the external environment, and in order to satisfy the habitual needs a person is compelled to compete for social opportunities with others, which determines his way of life. However, such a concept cannot explain the creative aspirations of many people who could be satisfied with simple methods of achieving the desired, but for self-fulfillment they often choose more multifaceted tasks that satisfy not only their material needs, but also emotional demands. Drawing a parallel between all living creatures of the earth, we can conclude, their behavior does not fit into the strict rules prescribed by scientific knowledge. Therefore, in order to describe these patterns, one must take into account another form of energy, called emotional. This part of the total energy of our reality is in a freer state than the material energy determining the device of a physical substance. The main form of manifestation of emotional energy is the intention that accompanies this or that process. Any physical process has an intention for its own flow, and in many cases this goal expressed at the level of emotions corresponds to the conditions of the physical environment. The life of a biological being can also be considered in the form of a physical process, and the flow of vital energy of this organism is most often realized within the framework of common regularities. Nevertheless, the inner intention guiding the flow of life energy in each creature is expressed in its own way, so that it has distinctive features that distinguish it among other individuals of the same species. Such individual manifestations are characteristic not only of organic matter, but also of mineral matter, which is expressed in the unique form of any crystal composing the Earth's crust. Each star or planet of this universe also has personal parameters that distinguish it from other cosmic bodies, and these unique signs are manifested due to the presence of one's own intention for development. However, individual features that are manifested in the course of the evolution of objects of cosmic scale are realized for billions of years, which is incommensurable with the life of an individual biological being. Therefore, we can assume that biological organisms have a greater force of intention for the realization of individuality, which allows them to deviate more often from the standard course and develop more freely. From this point of view, man, against the background of other organisms, showing individual features, is particularly bright, has the strongest intention for self-realization. Thus, the phenomena surrounding you are realized at the expense of two kinds of energy: material and emotional. Material energy is the driving force and determines the structure of matter. Emotional energy is embodied in the form of a desire to self-actualize, which has every phenomenon or object. Now that the excursion has been made towards energy laws, we can look at the phenomenon of black holes in a new light. Black holes cannot be described solely from materialistic positions, since the energy balance maintained by these objects cannot be realized only through the circulation of material energy. Describing the process of absorption of black holes by matter, scientists will sooner or later encounter the contradiction described earlier. To understand what is happening, researchers will have to agree with the existence of an unmanifest form of energy, called emotional. It is worth noting that scientists have already taken the first step in studying emotional energy, as they were forced to recognize its presence in the universe when observing space objects. This part of physical reality, which does not obey normal laws, is called dark matter by astronomers. The need to introduce this term is caused by unexpected deviations in the trajectories of the motion of individual cosmic objects, which is explained by the presence in the universe of an invisible substance, the accumulation of which at some points of space leads to gravitational anomalies. Drawing maps of the distribution of dark matter, the researchers notice that it is distributed unevenly and has the greatest concentration in the central parts of galaxies, where it acts as a connecting material between star clusters and unites them into a common structure. However, there is much more dark matter on the periphery of galaxies, where it exists in a scattered form, but the proportion of such an unconcentrated substance is enormous. Although scientists cannot register this substance, they estimated its number by the rate of repulsion of celestial bodies. The actual repulsion rate is lower than the theoretical value, calculated taking into account the size of the visible space objects. In the course of their movement, these bodies overcome the force of mutual attraction, which turned out to be higher than predicted theoretically. That is, the gravitational field of the universe is more powerful than its idealized model based on observing visible objects. Comparing the real intensity of the gravitational field with the calculated one and wanting to eliminate this discrepancy, physicists were forced to state a weighty fraction of dark matter among the matter of the universe. Thus, in physical reality, there are two kinds of matter. It is manifested and dark. Here you can draw a parallel with two kinds of energy, one of which is called material, is manifested and is accessible to physical perception, and the other is an invisible force implicitly directing physical phenomena and called emotional. We can assume that the manifested part of the substance has a connection with material energy and dark matter. With emotional energy, such reasoning leads us to an interesting conclusion. Dark matter is more emotional than a physical substance that people usually observe. In spite of the fact that emotional energy absorbs any manifested phenomenon or material object, a significant part of it has decided to go beyond the boundaries of habitual existence mediated by physical laws. The reason for such an escape was a close framework of development prepared for emotional energy in the event that it begins to act according to the rules of physical reality. In fact, emotional energy is the primary form of existence, and the material secondary. Long ago, when the matter of your universe did not exist, all its energy was expressed in an emotionally free form scattered throughout the universe. However, this energy was transferred to the impulse for its manifestation, which began to occur at one of the points of space. At the same time, certain qualities were communicated to her, which, by uniting some portion of energy, formed her specific properties. Each such separate energy impulse gave birth to one of the elementary particles, and so the formation of a material substance began. The process of expanding the universe from a point called the Big Bang, at the energy level is a factory transforming emotional energy into a material one. Initially, this process was launched at one point, but during the manifestation of the structure of the universe became more distributed and now occurs in the center of each galaxy, as well as in the bowels of stars and within many planets. Thermonuclear synthesis at such points is a continuation of the process of expressing emotional energy in a specific form. It is worth remembering that the main quality of emotional energy is her desire to act. Since emotional energy directly carries out the process of synthesis of matter, it can be assumed that its design in the form of a manifested matter is its inalienable desire. However, as the energy is materialized, it is divided into many elementary particles, each of which is essentially limited in its own choice. If initially the streams of emotional energy were integral and continuous, then in the course of its manifestation in matter they acquired the form of discrete impulses. Despite the fact that each particle is interconnected with others, the form of this interaction is clearly predetermined and these possibilities of communication are determined by physical laws. It turns out that the process of materialization is a trap for the emotional energy that was caught on her desire to express herself in a more tangible form. The main need of emotional energy is to feel yourself, and for this, it seeks to become condensed and look at itself from the outside. The variety of phenomena characteristic of the manifested matter attracts emotional energy, since it allows it to explore its own qualities. You can say that the whole structure of the universe is for her a simulator, which allows you to know your capabilities. At the same time, matter is a mirror for emotional energy, as different objects and phenomena can interact with each other and experience the results of their own manifestations in surrounding events. Thus, the positive side of the physical reality in the presence of many individuals developing in parallel and able to meet their needs through mutual support. All these needs are a manifestation of a common intention, since they are based on the streams of emotional energy that once were one. However, while supporting the plan for the creation of the universe, emotional energy is faced with one discrepancy: it is able to feel the fullness of experiences preserving its own integrity, and its materialization is accompanied by incessant separation. The fragmentation that emotional energy undergoes makes it more sparse than in the case of its existence in the form of free flows. At the physical level, this manifests itself in a low density of matter, the bulk of which is filled with electronic shells, and the nuclei that provide the weight of matter are negligibly small compared to the void created by electronic clouds. A similar relationship between matter and emptiness is characteristic of the structure of the entire universe, most of which is filled with vacuum. At the same time, parts of the universe tend to reunite with each other, which is manifested in the power of universal gravitation, but it is counteracted by the force of repulsion. This continuous divergence is inherited by matter from the very moment of the Big Bang, and still causes the matter of the universe to disconnect. It turns out that the evolution of the universe is directed towards suppressing the emotional potential inherent in its structure. If this process continues unchanged, then it promises an energy death, when inexorable pushing will turn the universe into an infinitely rarefied substance devoid of any structure. In this case, the very process of materialization, consisting in the manifestation of emotional energy in a concrete form, will lose its original meaning. Emotional energy filling any physical phenomenon and every elementary particle, feels that sentence which is prescribed to it and tries to get away from senseless self-destruction. The repulsion of material objects is accompanied by the dissipation of emotional energy occurring at every point of space, and being in such a dispersed state it is increasingly difficult for it to be aware of itself. In order to restore its resource state, emotional energy by willful effort triggers an inverse process that contradicts the physical laws that detract from its freedom. Outwardly, this is manifested in the formation of black holes, through which emotional energy seeks to assemble itself and regain its integrity. For this, it uses the force of universal gravitation, which consists in the mutual attraction of particles possessing mass. This is one of the key properties of energy, and not only its manifested component, but also emotional. It is at the expense of a mass that the free emotional energy can exist in the form of continuous streams, and not dissipate in space. At the same time, emotional energy can use this property consciously, which is expressed in the directed action of gravitational attraction. If the energy flow exists in a free form and is not dependent on any physical phenomena, then this volume of energy maintains itself due to the internal mutual attraction of its constituent waves. Such an isolated gravitational field does not affect physical matter and literally exists in a parallel space relative to physical reality. Such a neutral position is chosen by a significant part of the emotional energy of the universe, not yet involved in the cycle of materialization. However, part of this energy is not bound by specific obligations, has acquired the intention to support other manifestations of the universal energy trapped in physical matter. Starting to interact with the manifested substance with the help of the force of gravity, the free energy detects itself and is realized in the unplanned curvature of the trajectories of the motion of material bodies. So there is an effect of dark matter, which certainly is not matter in the usual sense of the word, and, more correctly, it is called enhanced gravity. At those points of the universe, which manifests the effect of dark matter, the free part of the energy tries to overcome repulsion continual space bodies and all the elementary particles among themselves. The greatest effort is exerted on it in the center of galaxies, since the stress caused by the pushing field can lead to the destruction of the structure of each galaxy. Realizing in the form of dark matter, emotional energy literally heals the cracks that form in the structure of the universe and prevents its meaningless decay. Another part of the dark matter scattered in the interstellar spaces tends to balance the common pushing field imposed on the space of the universe and leading it to death. But in spite of their efforts, free energy loses in this battle with the field that organizes the stretching of space and requires reinforcement to carry out its intention. To implement his plan, emotional energy decided to take a desperate step. It punctured the space of physical reality in some places, allowing the material energy to collapse and flow out of the closed energy system just as the air goes out of the ball. If there were no such points, then material processes would be carried out in a closed cycle and lose energy at each of their turns due to constant repulsion and dispersion. In fact, such a cyclic process is a spiral of evolution, where each subsequent revolution is wider than the previous one. The expansion of the spiral ensures that each new cycle differs from earlier ones, and although the processes of this cycle are based on previous principles, they express themselves in a slightly different form. It turns out that the expansion of the universe leading to the dissipation of energy, created to ensure a variety of physical phenomena. Something similar is seen by a person examining a spreading gasoline film over the surface of the water. As the flow progresses, the film becomes thinner and provides a unique play of colors, since the light passing through it at each instant is refracted in a new way inside it. Physical laws remain the same, but continuous stretching provides a visible diversity of the same phenomena. A similar effect of a gasoline film is realized in the whole material reality, which is nothing but an illusion for the physical beings observing it. From this point of view, the entire habitual process of evolution is a trap in which emotional energy has turned out. Instead of setting themselves up in a tangible and concrete form, energy gets hope for the vague prospect that awaits it at the end of each development cycle. Nevertheless, this cycle does not end, and after it follows movement on an even wider loop of an endless spiral. Since each new cycle is longer than the previous one, the emotional energy hoping for its full realization is harder to tolerate one's own lack of freedom and maintain self-control. Therefore, at a certain stage of evolution of the universe and its structure begin to appear, failure represents the black hole through which a portion of the energy tired of aimless circulation can return to its original state. The process of formation of black holes running from two sides. On the one hand, the free energy acts currently seeking additional aid for balancing the structure of the universe. The other, emotional energy captured physical structure substance and tries to go beyond it. It is through the promotion of these two components of the emotional energy of the universe that she has managed to create local disruptions in the materialization plan that relieve some of this energy from the limitations of physical reality. In fact, the black hole conducts the process of reverse materialization. During materialization, the energy is decompressed and the continuous spectrum is discretized. But when it enters a black hole, the substance loses the standard structure and is maximally condensed, which allows individual elementary particles to enter an unusually tight connection. In such conditions, the emotional energy that fills these particles unites and again feels its integrity. Nevertheless, being inside the material carrier of the nucleus of a black hole, this energy is not yet completely free. To finally break the contact with the material space, The energy inside the black hole must create a flow that would help it to enter the parallel dimension. This role is played by an avalanche of elementary particles collapsing on the body of a black hole and literally knocking out of it that energy that before it filled it. It turns out that the black hole is implemented the principle of the pipeline. A portion energy a moment ago came from the outside world and has reached the desired density under the pressure of a new portion of material flew into the vortex of a black hole becomes freedom. The flow of released energy does not come from outside, because the external environment represents a physical reality, contact with which emotional energy wants to avoid. It flows like a black hole, which is a passage into a parallel measurement. The space in which this energy falls is called the backstage of the universe, where it is behind the scenes of physical processes. Emotional energy captured by material reality is dressed in the scenery of various phenomena, and when released, it begins to see these interior objects from the side. On the one hand, becoming independent and uniting its parts, emotional energy again feels the richness of its experiences, which is the reason for inspiration and joy. On the other hand, being in an enthusiastic mood, she acquires a natural desire to share her vivid sensations, but in her space there is no one with whom she could communicate. Having restored the continuity of its streams, emotional energy again turns out to be alone, and the situation is identical to the state in which it was before the materialization of the universe. At that time, energy felt its potential, but could not get to know it in colors and details, and for this reason was inspired by the process of its own materialization. Such a process was initiated from the outside, and the force that transmitted the energy to the plan for its materialization can be represented as an observer above and encompassing with his attention a multitude of parallel universes. We do not need to describe to you higher levels of reality to consider the phenomenon of black holes. It is enough to remember the existence of observers on higher planes, who reacted to the request for energy to materialize, provided it with a scenario of such a process. Perhaps the energy of the universe could realize materialization on its own, but it remains true to its agreement with the upper levels, according to which it allows itself to be prompted and lead to the realization of its main mission. The materialization of the entire universe. The space of your universe is only one of the cells of the global primordial space, and its energy is part of the total energy of our reality. According to the general plan implemented in each universe, emotional energy agrees to supervise. As being carried away by its own particulars, it can be distracted from the main points of the materialization plan, which it originally shared. Involved in this process, she felt his limitations and shortcomings, but wished to bring his endeavors to the end. Nevertheless, the artificiality of the situation characteristic of most universes was the cause for frustration and despair, and the emotional energy that did not endure these frameworks began to gradually leave the processes it had begun. At the same time, having got rid and resting a little, the energy again fills with inspiration and remembers its hot hopes, which makes it re-engage in the processes of materialization. Part of this energy that has completed its full cycle of development again passes through the materialization portals located in the centers of galaxies, inside the stars and planets. Once again dressing in the material shell, she sooner or later becomes convinced of the tightness of these clothes and is looking for an opportunity to throw them off. In search of an exit, it triggers the formation of new black holes or uses those portals that have already been created. Then this cycle can be repeated again and again. And the energy of the universe has worked this scenario many times, being inspired and tired, and again deciding on a new attempt. If we look at this energy cycle from the outside, it becomes clear that the black holes are not a panacea that saves energy from confinement. They are only a link in the chain of processes carried out during the materialization and dematerialization of energy. It can be assumed that invisible observers at higher levels foresaw the possibility of black hole formation and saw their value. Black holes make it possible to balance the universal processes and to reduce the intensity of the passions of emotional energy filling certain phenomena. In the event that part of the energy of the universe is extremely disappointed and cannot cope with its own destructive emotions accumulated due to deprivation, it is granted leave. Going to the black hole and dropping the board structure, the energy gets a welcome respite. Subsequently, once again becoming involved in the cycle, a certain portion of energy can fill other phenomena, and so a change in the situation supports the illusion of diversity. Nevertheless, at a deeper level, emotional energy feels the interconnection between its parts, which, although they participate in different processes, are equally unfree and overwhelmed by groundless expectations. Perhaps in order to get rid of the eternal cycle in which she has to participate, she initiates the formation of a global black hole, into which it leaves without a trace and completely dissolves the structure of the universe. But in this case, it will again find itself at the initial stage of development, in which it remained before the process of materialization, and its unlimited potential will be unclaimed. Thus, the total self-destruction that the energy of the universe can accomplish by going into black holes is not a salvation for it. On the other hand, such a choice is more successful than a gradual dissipation that occurs as a result of the expansion of the universe launched at the time of the transfer of momentum to its materialization. Black holes allow you to balance this expansion and delay the death of the universe, which can occur in the event of a complete dissipation of its energy. Being in such a dispersed state, the universe will no longer be able to concentrate and independently implement one's own step. Perhaps, in this case, the outside observer standing at the top can help her, and together with the new scenario of its development, he will give energy support to the way out of the absurd position in which she will stay. However, it is worth noting that an absolutely dispersed state is akin to absolute non-manifestation, in which energy was at the very beginning. Once again in this position, it will lose the opportunities that it has in the modern stage of development, when its rapid flows are framed in a variety of diverse phenomena. The main advantage that the universe has at the moment is an opportunity to act, in any extreme conditions characteristic of it, deprive it of this right. In one of the states of the previous materialization, the energy is extremely concentrated and is able to realize its potential at any point of space occupied by it, but it is not able to start this process on its own. Having fulfilled the plan transferred to it to the very end and evenly distributed in space, the energy becomes inert and incapable of inspiring itself to a new step. Based on this, the current situation cannot be solved by avoiding it, because this will only lead the process of materialization to a new circle. Perhaps, right now unique opportunities for action are opened, when the energy system of the universe is sufficiently balanced and the intention for total self-destruction has not yet been created. Such an intention can be expressed by a multitude of inhabitants of the universe on the collective level of consciousness, who are tired of the meaningless cyclicity of their own transformations, activating the possibility of exiting the game by forming a powerful black hole. But as it was already said, it will return the universe to the initial stage of development, and all the acquired opportunities will be lost and will pass into the category of negative experience. It is possible that a more worthy solution to the problem is to maintain the energy balance of the universe, but with the use of new and not yet fully manifested opportunities that arise from the interaction of materialized energy and dark matter. The dark substance is a free emotional energy that has not yet been involved in a new development cycle and anticipates the shortcomings of the repetition of the previous scenario. Acting point by point, this part of the energy of the universe tries to influence the general course of phenomena in order to rescue them from the vicious circle. At present only one of the properties of dark matter is manifested: its mass, with which it can interact with the developed substance. However, this is only the smallest part of the potential of free energy, and many of its other properties will open up if the inhabitants of physical reality show interest in this phenomenon and begin to consciously interact with it. The logical comprehension of this unique substance is practically unpromising, since its essence is emotional. Despite the fact that scientists discovered dark matter in the course of research, it manifested itself as a mismatch in the calculations. If physicists try to advance in the scientific study of this type of energy, they will encounter new paradoxes that cannot be laid within the framework of previous concepts. On the other hand, perhaps the scientist's interest in dark matter will allow scientific knowledge to finally emerge from the stiffness in which it now resides. That this process of the liberation of science from its own stereotypes occurred harmoniously, and not by breaking old paradigms. Researchers can supplement the harmonious logical computations with the methods of emotional communication with physical phenomena. Emotional energy filling any process wants to be noticed and looked at its vibrations, recognized its true needs. In this case, her disappointment will be replaced by enthusiasm, and this positive energy surge can be directed to the transformation of physical reality. Sensual communication of scientists with objects of their research, capable of starting in modern times, is able to launch a cascade of completely unexplained phenomena, but long-awaited and understandable at the level of sensations. An explanation of these phenomena will occur through the development of new methods of cognition, based not only on logic and the mathematical apparatus, but also on the needs of the researchers themselves. Personal desires of scientists reflect the vibrations of their own vital energy, which also wants to manifest its essence and therefore directs these people according to an unconventional life scenario, inspiring them for non-trivial experiments. Becoming more sensitive to his needs, a scientist can start a paradoxical dialogue with his own essence, which will result in an energy interaction with cognizable phenomena. This will begin the awakening and liberation of material energy, which will not happen through its escape through black holes, but through the acquisition of the meaning of life. In this process, dark matter can also participate, which will become an invisible support for every person or process that entered into a sensory dialogue with the surrounding phenomena. Dark matter exists in a parallel dimension and therefore acting behind the scenes, it can affect any point in the space of the materialized universe. It is possible that a person who has begun an unusually subtle and quivering communication with the outside world will be able to invite into his life a dark matter that will become the source of his many unusual qualities. Dark matter is a free part of emotional energy, and therefore able to support any intention. This energy has already been used in the past by many magicians who lived on Earth, and in the near future the contact of mankind with dark matter can intensify. This is due to the forthcoming weakening of the impact of external fields on the Earth's energy system, thanks to which the previous rules on which it developed will become less stringent. The inhabitants of your planet will have the opportunity to come up with new scenarios of their existence, including changing physical laws. Mages of past times also had the opportunity to change the course of standard processes, which was expressed in the miraculous and incomprehensible events of their life. But these deviations from the norm occurred on a local level, since the total field of the Earth kept itself within strict limits. Such changes, which were of a private nature, were supported by a dark energy that sensed the unusually lively and creative approach of the magicians to their lives, which was close to itself and became the reason for supporting these people. In the future, due to the weakening pressure of external fields, many people will be able to feel emotional liberation and create the prerequisites for the presence of dark matter in their lives. So the need for personal self-expression, which has an internal energy filling every person or any phenomena, can be realized on the Earth more harmoniously. In this case, the phenomenon of black holes will also acquire a different meaning. If now these objects represent gaps through which materialized energy flows, then in the future they will be able to realize their true potential and become portals in a completely new dimension. If the energy of the universe abandons its hopeless idea of total liberation and regains faith in itself, then its passage through black holes will be accomplished not for the purpose of dropping the structure of matter, but for its transformation. Matter falling into a black hole will not collapse, but will undergo a subtle perestroika, while new properties will be laid in it, realized outside the previous limitations. This new matter will exist in the same physical space, but will begin to develop according to new principles that will be formulated by those beings who will create similar portals. Perhaps, with the cooperation of people and dark matter on Earth, black holes will appear that will suck in the old matter and transform it. It may also be that such a role will be played by the already existing black hole of cosmic scale, which, through emotional communication with humanity, will acquire a new meaning of life. Drawing in itself the solar system, this black hole will not only liberate vital energy by destroying matter, but will formalize it in that external form that will correspond to the inner needs of each being. Passing through this portal and coming out at the other end, the Earth will become completely different, but it will not lose its essence. Rather, on the contrary, the deep meaning of each phenomenon will be highlighted more clearly and unobtrusively, since it is these vibrations that will be manifested when immersed in a black hole. From the ordinary point of view, there will be a general death, since the old structure of the substance will no longer remain. However, the emotional content of each creature will be preserved and, moreover, will find new and comfortable clothes, and then appearance will correspond to internal needs. Such a cardiac transformation at the moment seems to be a complete fantasy, and of course this transformation will not happen in the near future. But the preparation for this deep reorganization of the entire matter of the Earth can begin now by every person by establishing an emotional contact with physical phenomena. Of course, The first physical object with which a person should establish a deep sensual connection is his own material body. Having begun an inner dialogue with her life energy and becoming more responsive to her needs, a person will be able to lift himself up by vibrations and be inspired by a new step. Such a radically new step cannot yet be perfected, since the surrounding physical and social processes are still constrained by the old laws. This step can be accomplished within the person himself and will consist in inviting dark matter into his body, capable of carrying out his subtle reorganization. Inside the physical shell a black hole will open, which gradually tightening the organic matter will modify it, supplying people with molecules with a completely new structure. Such molecules are absorbed by each cell, allowing them to gently redirect the physiological processes and exit from a meaningless cycle, largely related to survival. In fact, the human body is an analog of the universe, and the life cycle of its physical incarnation is like the global circle around which emotional energy circulates. By launching a subtle physiological reconstruction, a person will leave the need to reincarnate from life to life by implementing similar scenarios. His personal black hole, living inside him, will ensure the continuous renewal of his organs and tissues, so that he can live for an unlimited time and, at his own desire, to launch inside the body any processes leading to the realization of new abilities. Thanks to this, life will become a continuous process of self-knowledge, and by exploring the possibilities of one's body, a person will learn the world around him in new ways. Thus, black holes are portals, the true potential of which lies in the possibility of the transformation of matter and the complete degeneration of the universe. However, at the present time these portals realize only the first part of their own plan. They destroy and release the materialized energy, without giving it new properties. The reason is that new principles that could be laid in the substance of the universe have not yet been created. Because of this, the desire to act is fulfilled, emotional energy is realized in an inharmonious way and leads to the extermination of entire stellar systems occurring in the zones of black holes. However, in the future, these unique objects can acquire a new sense of existence, and perhaps it will appear in cooperation with people. Emotional energy filling the person is characterized by a special inner freedom, which manifests itself in this unusually strong desire to realize his individuality. Entering a more tangible and conscious sensory contact with surrounding phenomena, a person can start the process of renewing emotional energy filling the earth processes. Such a wave of freshness and awakening can affect not only the surface, but also the deep layers of the planet whose substance has a special energy potential. In the depths of the earth, a black hole can also be activated, which will conduct a gradual restructuring of the structure of matter. In this case, the transformation of your planet will happen by its own forces, and for this it is not necessary to use black holes of a galactic scale. So on Earth will open its own black hole, realizing its true purpose, which consists in renewing the matter of your planet and manifesting its true beauty. Sincerely, Guardian. Greetings. We are the Guardians. Today we will talk about how a person's sensual sphere can give impetus to the awakening of his ancestral abilities. We will consider the relationship between man and the material world, which is the basis for his life, the earth. At first glance this connection is limited by the presence of a physical body in man, which is an integral part of the matter of the planet. However, in reality, human communication with the earth can also occur at deeper levels, energetic and mental. Currently, the energy and mental shells of most people really do not allow their owners to contact the body of the planet. The reason is that people focus their attention on social processes that are based on vibrations alien to the earth. As mentioned earlier, the basis for society is a four-dimensional information matrix created at the end of a fabulous era in order to guide humanity. This matrix manifested itself due to the impact on the Earth's field from the side of the six-dimensional galaxy matrix, and the system existing on the surface of the planet is part of the information structure of the Milky Way galaxy. As it evolved, the four-dimensional system sought to adapt to terrestrial vibrations, and at the deepest level of its structure, such an adjustment did occur. However, the system is constantly exposed to effects from the galactic fields. Cosmic radiation is superimposed on the frequencies of the Earth system and distorts them. Such deviations are characteristic not only of society, but also of the natural environment, which is part of a single four-dimensional matrix of the modern system. Due to this effect, The system remains a foreign structure superimposed on the surface of the planet and keeps most of the creatures under its control in an uncharacteristic condition for the Earth. The control extends to all human bodies, mental, emotional and physical. At the mental level, the influence of the system manifested itself in the design of programs used for thinking and building a plan for achieving goals. In fact, each such program is alien and solves the tasks of one of extraterrestrial civilizations. In order to pursue their interests on Earth, representatives of such a civilization do not have to be present in the field of the planet. It is enough for these creatures to encode their intentions in the form of programs capable of assimilating the four-dimensional matrix of the system and transmit these codes in the radiation coming to Earth from space. Translators of these alien vibrations are global space bodies surrounding the Earth, connected into a single energy network. This network includes most of the star clusters of your galaxy, each of which is a separate material world within which there is a civilization. In order to transfer their request to the Earth system, representatives of this civilization can use their stars as emitters that affect a certain sector of the social or natural system. In general, the entire four-dimensional matrix is divided into sectors, each of which is controlled by a separate civilization or commonwealth from the position of the Galactic Council. Such distinctions allow the terrestrial civilization to develop multifaceted and solve problems on a galaxy scale. The sphere of control available to a particular civilization is not chosen by chance and corresponds to its specialization, within which its representatives develop during the whole period of the existence of this race. Such a period can be many billions of years, during which each civilization achieves unsurpassed results in its development direction. All spheres of influence are distributed by teachers on the 7th level, building the path of evolution of individual civilizations. These particular tasks expressed by the teachers in the form of thought forms are transmitted to the 6th level in the form of programs that integrate into the 6th-dimensional matrix that determine the course of development of each material world. Representatives of the 6th level, called angels, provide the interconnection of the 6th-dimensional matrix with the field of each star system. In fact, the galaxy is controlled by a matrix of the 6th level, as its structure determines the interests of each individual civilization. Despite the fact that residents of each star system can independently send requests to Earth, these commands are determined by programs created at the 6th level. It turns out that in the process of controlling humanity, other civilizations play the role of intermediaries, and galactic resonators play the role of amplifiers. The galaxy structure consisting of many stars is nothing but the material basis for a 6th-dimensional matrix. Therefore, there is no one energy center affecting the Earth, and each galactic radiator realizes one of the tasks of the 6th level. Such a distribution of tasks at the level of the 6th-dimensional matrix was reflected in the fragmentation of social and natural processes. Each country is supervised by its own circle of civilizations, and the foreign policy of the state is aimed at settling relations with another alien association. Such relationships are also characteristic of economic processes, where each global corporation has its representatives at the galaxy level. Competition between different companies is associated with the collision of interests of different alien forces, the main desire of which is to expand the degree of influence on people within their sector. If a certain civilization is given the opportunity to develop in a knowledge-intensive business, then it will be implemented precisely in this area, but at the same time it will strive to cover the market as widely as possible. Similarly, there are alien influences in science, art, sports, and even family relationships. In particular, the sample programs used by people in love are also provided by certain civilizations specializing in the manifestation of subtle emotions. On the one hand, such extraterrestrial beings really have a wealth of experience in the field of close relationships, and their programs broadcast to the Earth field are based on their sincere desire to support Earthlings in their development. However, the main drawback of any programs captured in the four-dimensional matrix is that they are not adapted to the interests of the Earth. It can be said that people in love interact with each other as aliens, and although their feelings can be incredibly subtle and deep, the patterns by which such contacts occur do not correspond to their true needs. People feel these limitations, but without being able to go beyond these limits, they are forced to show emotions in accordance with the established standard. In order to get away from senseless grief, a person gradually begins to consider imposed programs as his own and even gets pleasure from them. In a romantic relationship, It is customary to give flowers, and a man who manifests his feelings in this way is inspired by the choice of bouquet and his direct gift. But if you look at the program itself, which is the basis of this action, you can see its disharmonious nature, because in order to give flowers, it is required to deprive them of their contact with the ground, which inevitably leads to their death. It can be assumed that in the other material world where this program comes from, the flowers are something completely different and do not have direct contact with the shell of the corresponding planet. Such a phenomenon may differ in particular colorfulness and versatility, and fully reflect the deep feelings of the representatives of the alien race. However, transferring a similar instrument of communication to humanity, the inhabitants of another material world designed it in the form of a program with a fairly rigid structure. The static nature of this pattern is associated with the tremendous power of a galactic matrix based on a network of billions of stars, compared with which the Earth's field is negligible. From this point of view, no matter how refined the transmitted scheme is, humanity simply cannot change it due to the incredible intensity of the radiation transmitting it. Likewise, an individual soldier is not able to quit with an entire army and will be forced to obey the will of its commander-in-chief. Perhaps the program being a prototype for giving flowers could take shape on Earth much more harmoniously, but for this its adjustment to earthly conditions should have happened much softer. Perhaps, instead of flowers, men would give their own works of art, such as poems or images of a beloved woman drawn in a fit of passion. Most men are predisposed to give such gifts, but not always a person is in such a light mood to create himself. It is much easier to buy a ready-made product, and since bouquets of flowers are a common way to show their sympathy, they are used everywhere. However, the prevalence of this program is associated with support from the four-dimensional matrix, and not with the satisfaction of the request of people. When adapting such a pattern to terrestrial conditions, the system selected the closest phenomenon to the alien phenomena. Since sympathy for flowers is peculiar to each person, these manifestations of living nature were chosen as a sign of attention. At the same time, such a choice was made on the mental plane, since the four-dimensional matrix operates only with the information component of thought forms, and not with their emotional content. Therefore, choosing the colors, the system was guided only by external compliance, but not energy reasoning with the help of mental schemes. The four-dimensional matrix did not attach importance to the painful sensations of colors, which are deprived of support in the form of earthly firmament. In essence, by giving picked flowers, the man also conveys to the woman the pain of these creatures who are victims of such a ritual. Such disappointment is the background for any social phenomena, since the programs on which they are based are adapted to Earth only as a first approximation, and in fact remain alien. This approach affected all scientific knowledge, during which the scientist needed to test his object of research, which often boils down to the torture of a living creature. Every particle of matter has a living basis, and in the case of the humanities, a social phenomenon or a work of art, the basis of the life of a phenomenon is the deep emotional vibrations hidden in it and directly connecting it with the primordial energies of the earth. It turns out that the real goal of the programs of alien origin is to torture earthly life and distort its essence. This is clearly visible on natural phenomena, which are also based on the immutable laws transmitted from space. In particular, animal instincts forcing them to survive and consume each other for food are a kind of basic programs transmitted to the earth from the upper levels. Such fear-based programs do not allow animals to sense vibrations that are close to them and literally replace their own feelings. Something similar happens in people's lives. And although social survival programs operate more gently, they also block a person's emotional awareness. Low vibrations created by such stereotypes clog the natural sensitivity of a person and make him act thoughtlessly. Most lovers would like to act creatively, but all their relationships consist of painful compromises. And to abstract from them, it is easier to become insensitive to subtle nuances and act according to standards. Exactly the same role was played by torture, previously widely used during interrogations. They do not leave a person a chance to think. At present, the need for physical torture is eliminated, since an increase in the sensitivity of people turns most spheres of life into torment, which can lead to a significant decrease in awareness. Thus, the compromise form of any program used by people is not the result of an attention of the system. The reason is the advantage of such inconsistencies leading to discomfort. Low vibrations and pain in particular are the best management tool. and in many cases the system specifically seeks this form of implementing its processes to bring greater discomfort. The more disharmonious such experiences, the stronger the impulse to act, which will be realized regardless of the deepest feelings of the being executing this order. At the same time, a similar management style used by the hierarchy is realized unconsciously, since spiritual entities themselves do not feel low vibrations. Hierarchy representatives once had to abandon these experiences in order to be able to contact basic programs without hurting themselves. Having imposed a limit on their own sensitivity, spiritual entities forgot about the negative effect produced by ancient patterns and began to use them everywhere. In fact, all modern programs used by people at present are varieties of basic stereotypes. Each such program has a good foundation, which made itself felt in the course of the development of one of extraterrestrial civilizations. However, being transmitted to the field of the Earth, such a program is specifically distorted in such a way as to become a more effective management tool. This distortion is introduced by the base programs through the six-dimensional matrix of the galaxy, which have complete control over the information filter. Therefore, even if the alien program is ideally suited to terrestrial conditions, after its modification, it exhibits disharmonious properties. The four-dimensional matrix of the Earth is a direct continuation of the six-dimensional galactic matrix, and therefore performs similar functions. From this point of view, many instruments for achieving goals adopted in society or in a social environment may have a truly earthly origin. However, after the processing of such thought forms by base programs, they are expressed in the form of a compromise and become a source of implicit disappointments. Such distortion carries in itself the mental sphere of each person, because it is filled with such compromise patterns. The mental matrix of a person determines the majority of decisions made in everyday life, and therefore is expressed in physical actions. It turns out that the distorted programs are most reflected in two spheres of being, mental and material. The emotional sphere also reacts to the disharmony of thoughts and actions, but at the same time it is less captured by programs. The reason is that in order to use common patterns, a person has to exclude his own feelings from consideration, that is, to block his own emotional sphere. Such a blockage imposed by a person personally is similar to the reception of the hierarchy aimed at blunting its own sensitivity to low vibrations. In both these cases, the capabilities of the energy body do not disappear and can be restored. In the ideal case, the activation of fine sensitivity could help Earthlings to realize the limitations imposed on them and modify the programs used in accordance with their requests. It can be assumed that the activating radiation coming from space from 2012 is transmitted by the hierarchy in order to support people in such a restructuring of their consciousness. However, spiritual entities do not take into account the unusually high density of sensations characteristic of physical existence, as a result of which any disharmonious experiences literally stop any sensible reasoning. Given this effect, an increase in emotional susceptibility can only lead to new torments that will force people to impose an even more serious block on their own emotional sphere. At the same time, the activating effect exerted by external fields will not allow people to completely give up their sensations. To ease discomfort, many people push their emotions to a subconscious level and begin to react to them unconsciously. As a result, such people will become extremely manageable. And instead of revising former beliefs, on the contrary, they will strengthen old patterns that they will continue to lead. A similar scenario is prepared by basic programs seeking to maintain their control over humanity in a transitional period. Although in the active phase of the transition the effects of the galactic fields will be removed, the four-dimensional matrix can still keep in itself an outdated form of programs. The activating radiation can give strength to these patterns and so strengthen them in the field of the Earth that it simply will not allow Earthlings to reconsider them. From this point of view, the cosmic radiation increasing sensitivity turns into a simple instrument of control. It can be assumed that according to the plan of the hierarchy, the activation should have been much milder, allowing the susceptibility of people to gradually wake up. In this case, the prerequisites would be created for re-understanding values and formulating methods of action that are harmonious for earthly existence. However, the order given by spiritual entities aimed at manifesting the sensitivity of Earthlings was distorted at the level of a six-dimensional matrix. Basic programs, having the ability to correct the propagation of any pulse through a network of star clusters, are able to regulate its intensity by executing the command transmitted from above. The six-dimensional matrix significantly increased the flow of activating energy directed toward the Earth from the side of a multitude of galactic emitters. Due to such amplification, excessive fixation of old patterns reflected in the four-dimensional system of the Earth can occur. Thus, the basic programs can retain control over terrestrial processes even during the transition period, when the planet will be unavailable for the six-dimensional galaxy matrix. Thus, at present, the mental body of a person can be considered alien since it is subject to galactic influence. The mental sheath, in turn, affects the physical body and largely mediates the actions of a person. Moreover, many signs of a biological body are of extraterrestrial origin. Since physiological processes are based on survival programs, the control of these programs is implemented at the genetic level and is manifested in the need for a person to eat organic food, sleep, and defend himself from too high and low temperatures. In fact, the human body is much more flexible, and also has its own energy source, which does not require additional feeding from the outside. The narrowing of the possibilities of the physical body of man occurred as a result of the interbreeding of ancient people with a younger branch of humanity, which in its physiology is close to animals. The most ancient people who arrived on Earth from other planets of the star system had a completely different composition of biological tissues, which was closer to the mineral world. Therefore, in order to fuel their bodies, such people needed to communicate more with inorganic creatures in the form of rocks, water and wine flows that manifested earthly energies. Mineral components absorbed by people were not sources of life force, but transmitted the vibrations that were required by man to make contact with the deep shells of the planet. In fact, the personal source of human energy was inseparably connected with the energy center of the planet, and the resonance between them allowed the person to activate his own energy reserves. The substance with which the ancient people communicated allowed them to be in a subtle relationship with the entire planet, and so the resonance with its deep source was maintained. It can be said that in this interaction man was not dependent on his own planet. He was a partner for her. Just as the Earth activated the energy center of man, so he supported the many facets of her experiences. This relationship with the planetary center was built not only by people, but also by all representatives of a fabulous civilization, thanks to which the source of the life energy of the planet was iridescent with vibrations of an uncountable set of individuals. Certainly, the planet shared its emotional resources with each inhabitant of the surface, but at the same time each had its own power, and also charged the Earth with its senses. It turns out that at a fabulous time, each person felt himself equal in his capabilities to the entire planet, since his emotions were combined with the field of the Earth. In parallel with the most ancient branch of people, a younger one developed, which originated from the minerals of the Earth. At the beginning of its development, the young race of people was very close to the more ancient community, and the composition of the bodies of their representatives allowed them to create common families. However, by the end of the fairy tale era, the young race began to isolate itself and become closer to animals, which was due to the intention of its representatives to support other species of living organisms. The reason is that many animals that appeared on Earth are descendants of various galactic civilizations and inherited their strengths. But at the same time, each species could develop only within the limits of the specialization that was characteristic of its alien ancestors. People descended from the minerals of the Earth felt the discomfort of animals, the biological characteristics of which did not allow them to become truly earthly creatures. This was due to the fact that each species was under the influence of the galactic resonator, which controlled the civilization that was the predecessor of these animals. The vibrations of the cosmic radiator were so intense that they scored any individual vibrations and turned the appearance of Earth creatures into a simple tool for the realization of alien plans. Such a discrepancy did not suit the power of the Earth, which did not perceive animals as part of the planet. For the sake of correcting this deficiency, it was decided to create a primordially earthly branch of life, which, merging with extraterrestrial organisms, could adapt them. In the course of evolution from the beginning of the Earth life, not only people appeared, but also many intermediate forms, which, interbreeding with the alien life, introducing earthly genes into it. However, the impact of galactic emitters led to the fact that genes that had cosmic origin dominated over the genes created by the Earth. Feeling dissatisfaction with such a result, the spiritual essences of the Earth created new impulses leading to new stages of the merging of Earth and alien life. However, The failure of these attempts indicated that it was necessary to change the principles of contact with animals. In order to remove the restrictions from biological beings, it required an extraordinarily creative energy that people possessed. Its source was the oldest race of people, and it was based on the vast experience of past incarnations, as well as on the diversity of their experiences. The fact is that the ancient race of people descended from a multitude of other civilizations, and gathered in itself unique representatives of other worlds, which were closely existed in the previous framework. Each creature that gave rise to man dared to abandon the narrow specialization and showed a special wealth of emotional experiences. However, together with vast experience and extraordinary aspirations, each person inherited the limitations of his past incarnations. In order to free the heredity of people from obsolete genes, Earth decided to connect them with another branch of people born on this planet. The young race did not have genetic limitations, and when common children appeared in such two communities, their descendants gained greater freedom on the physical plane. At the same time, such new people showed the depth of experience inherited from the ancient race, and could fully manifest it in their material body. Thus, at the merging of two branches of people, the man appeared who could fully manifest both his emotional and physical potential. The bodies of such people could easily transform and adapt to their sensual needs. The new race assimilated with two former branches of people and united them. After the merger, some people, at the request of the gods of Earth, decided to support animals in order to free them from obsolete genetic information. In fact, it was necessary to carry out the same process that was successfully carried out with the oldest race, allowing it to get rid of the old conventions. Since after this stage the two human communities came together, now all people were not only free genetically, but also possessed extraordinary creative potential. From the point of view of the gods of Earth, this unique combination was enough to cope with the most serious blockages imposed on animals. But in order to get closer to the animal world, people who dared to save them needed to display a number of information codes in their genotype, due to which human genes could be assimilated by animals. That is, people of a fabulous time. How far from the animals according to their capabilities, their genes transferred to these creatures would become foreign structures and could not take root. In order to find a way to adapt human genes, the people who conducted the experiment began to study the genotype of animals, personally showing the qualities of individual species. In the course of such a study, an intermediate form of life was indeed found, which allowed the transfer of a whole complex of genes to animals. Due to this, the ancient animals became closer to fairy people, and the energy gap between them narrowed. Such a rapprochement contributed to the emergence of many unusual physical creatures, who took the beginning from ancient species, but at the same time are able to transform their body at will. A branch of people closer to the animal kingdom has survived and conducted their further adaptation to the energies of the Earth. However, at the end of the fabulous time there was an increase in the galactic impact, which led to a failure in the development of a fabulous civilization. One of the reasons for this failure was that the genes of animals of alien origin began to dominate human genes that had previously given them freedom. A branch of humans, drawn together with animals, decided to help these creatures to escape from recapture, but due to increased cosmic influence, it was unable to restore the lost balance. The reason was that these people themselves inherited the alien animal genes, which distorted their intent and made them dependent in their desire to help other physical beings. In the course of this interaction, extraterrestrial genes received additional reinforcement due to the emotional resonance between humans and animals. At the same time, people did not have sexual intercourse with the animal world, but simply conveyed their qualities at the level of the emotional state. The peculiar energy potential of people of that time allowed the transfer of genes in the form of energy codes, due to which they sought to lay new properties in animals. However, due to the restrictions imposed on such interaction, the animals were not released, but rather narrowed the range of their capabilities. Genes transmitted by humans really rejected the course of the development of the animal world, and at the same time animals with human traits were born. However, such signs were rigidly fixed, as they were held by vibrations of alien genes. Essentially, beings were born more and more like modern humans who have a direct connection with animals at the genetic level. Such a selection was carried out under the control of the galactic fields. Since the whole process was provoked by their enhanced radiation, cosmic resonators could completely direct the process of the evolution of life on the surface of the planet. Because the energetic conditions were fully determined. Due to this influence, The most successful form of life became those creatures who organized representatives of the sixth level and could obey their instructions. In this regard, the priority was given to individual species of animals, again showing a narrow specialization, as well as people who adopted their genes and also occupied a separate niche in the natural environment. A freer race of people was in a losing position, and in order to save themselves, some people began to free themselves from physical bodies and go deep into the earth, as other fabulous creatures of intangible nature did. However, many people who were descendants of the oldest branch felt a significant narrowing of opportunities due to the rejection of physical existence, so we decided to stay on the surface of the planet. In order to adapt to lowering vibrations in the field of the earth, such people had to connect with a branch of humanity that was drawn closer to the animal world. This branch felt more harmonious in the changed conditions, as it received emotional support from the galactic fields. Wanting to ease their own tension, many people agreed to restrictions in the form of genes capable of being transmitted to them from animals, and produced a final convergence. Other people who did not agree to such a merger were forced to simply die out, because they could not adapt to the new conditions. Nevertheless, at the end of their incarnation, many such people went into parallel worlds existing underground. Although, like fabulous creatures, they have no material basis, but on an emotional level they have retained their true vibrations. Such parallel measurements are not far from the surface, as the people who created them sought to connect with humanity of the future. These ancient members of humanity hoped that sooner or later the energy conditions would change for the better and allow people to start exploring their original capabilities. In the course of such searches, an unusually creative potential peculiar to people would begin to wake up, and such vibrations would wake up the ancestors of humanity, storing such vibrations in their energy bodies. Perhaps, in the course of the interaction of modern people and representatives of the fairy tale era, the inhabitants of the underground layers could even get a new physical birth, and then there would be an opportunity to transfer their capabilities directly. However, in order for such a contact to take place, modern people need to feel their own potential and manifest the state that can attract the attention of the earth energy beings. This is not only about former people, but also about the multitude of the earth races, which are very different from people in their abilities, but also being guardians of experiences that were characteristic of earthlings in a fabulous time. All such contacts can support modern humans in drawing closer to the vibrations of your planet and freeing their biological bodies from galactic blockages. However, humankind needs to start this way by itself, because the inhabitants of the depths of the earth are now afraid to come to the surface. The reason is that there are no vibrations close to them on the surface, and they literally have nothing to cling to in order to begin this contact. Nevertheless, at the energy level, every modern man remains pure of galactic influence, and fully inherits the capabilities of his ancestors. Despite the fact that the energy body reacts to impulses from the programs imprinted in the mental matrix, it is used only for a fraction of a percent of its capabilities. The largest part of the energy shell is derived from the social game, and the person deliberately set it aside in the hope that when the influence of the programs of consciousness is weakened, he will be able to manifest his original vibrations. Transition time can present such an opportunity, as having lost support from the galactic fields, many ancient programs strengthened in the four-dimensional matrix will begin to weaken. However, the feeling of uncertainty that will be felt by each inhabitant of the Earth's surface may, on the contrary, lead to an increase in outdated programs. Such an outcome will be associated with the lack of points of support, and in search of familiar confidence, many people can rely on stereotypes that have already been tested, thereby strengthening them. Such a process of strengthening the previous programs can occur at the level of the collective consciousness of humanity, and acting with an eye on others. A person can further strengthen the basic programs of his consciousness. The activity of such programs will be further heated by cosmic radiation, which will increase its intensity up to the key transition point. At the key moment, the activating effect will weaken, but additionally reinforced stereotypes may be so strong that they will not allow a person to let them go. If we consider this question at the level of consciousness, then the transition process is hopeless, and after temporarily relaxing the basic programs, they will regain their control again due to their familiarity. However, if a person relies on the possibilities of the emotional sphere, then with the help of it is possible to balance the mental processes so that they do not stand on the old rails. For this, The process of emotional release should start before the key phase of the transition, during which, along with the activation of the energy body, the base programs will be strengthened due to the reinforcement from the four-dimensional matrix. In fact, the futility of the transition may lie in the fact that at the crucial moment a favorable process of sensual liberation will completely overlap with increased mental limitations. Such an overlay will only lead to tension at the level of a person being, which will not allow him to relax his perceptions and find new points of support. However, if the focus of the person attention shifts towards the emotional sphere, then he will advance the strength of the favorable trend and weaken undesirable restrictions. In this case, the active phase of the transition can safely affect such a person and support the process of recognizing his deep vibrations, and the basic programs will not be able to fully capture his perception. The process of emotional release, which can be started by a person at the present time, may consist in revising his attitude towards different aspects of life. Many current trends are difficult to change due to their large inertia, as well as due to increased cosmic influence. However, at the key moment of the transition, many programs will become more malleable, and for their restructuring it will be enough for them to pass on a new emotional tune. Preparation may consist in the search for such views on modern social phenomena that reflect the deepest human needs. In particular, a young man can dream of what form the gift of flowers can take after the pressure of the galactic fields decreases. The purpose of the lover is to convey to his partner his subtle feelings, and when buying a bouquet, the person chooses such nuances that reflect the vibrations of his mood. Exactly the same role can be played by compliments, views and gestures full of passion, sincere mutual support. In general, any deed qualitatively expressing the emotions of a lover can become an analog of colors, and in fabulous times people could charge any piece of matter with their deep feelings. The physical body of a person is for him the closest part of the matter of the planet, and it is possible that it will become a resonator expressing the feelings of a lover. People use similar methods until now, and lay the desired vibrations in the intonation of their own voice, in facial expressions and every touch. Perhaps, instead of giving flowers, in the period of transition people will give their loved ones themselves. This means that the flowers will no longer be the main intermediaries in the communication of lovers, and people who love each other will begin to convey their feelings directly. At the same time, flowers may remain as an enhancer of internal sensations, but they will stand in an endless row with other possibilities of creative expression. A declaration of love may even become a new form of art, to which everyone can join, because at such moments it will be peculiar to a special inspiration that incites his creative abilities. The main tool of self-expression will be the physical body of a person, which will play the role of a resonator. Auxiliary tools will be speech turns, visual images, gestures and physical objects, attracting human attention due to the proximity of vibrations to the testate. In this way, a favorable connection between the energy body and the physical shell will manifest, thanks to which emotional experiences can be directly expressed in the external world. At the same time, a new program will begin to form in the mental body, which will initially consist in the liberation from previous conventions. In the context of giving flowers, the first step is to get away from the rigid form and diversify the options for the transfer of their feelings to other tools. In the course of the manifestation of the diversity of possibilities, a person will begin to explore his own emotional needs, finding such means of expressing feelings that are especially pleasing to him. Thus, a new program will gradually begin to form, which will be based on personal preferences, but will not be rigidly fixed on individual approaches. The reason is that in order to maintain the best emotional state, it is important for a person to be free in this creative search. Perhaps, at the same time, he will improve the methods already found, but this improvement will be effective by expanding development options. If someone likes to give their emotions with the help of visual images, then they can be transmitted not only with the help of visual art, but for example expressed in poetic form and even in the form of dance. Any image is an association, and it can be reflected in any sphere of creativity. Some person will want to transfer their emotions as an energy wave, and at first he may be predisposed to direct physical contact, expressing this connection in the form of massage, but during the experiment with his feelings, the person will feel that you can transfer your emotions in voice vibrations, and in the plastic of the body. In general, any movement can be represented as a wave, because it occurs during a certain time period, during which the desired energy effect is enhanced. Therefore, in the course of self-improvement, Such a person can see that any of his actions allows one to put the desired vibration in oneself and pass it on to those around him. Such a study of one's own emotional sphere can occur in any direction of human life, because realization takes place with the help of direct actions. In the standard approach, the nature of actions is determined by the programs of the mental matrix, and the energy body participates only indirectly. The reason is the rigidity of modern programs that do not allow the emotional body to fully manifest itself. However, taking into account the approaching key moment of transition, it is important to dream of a new form of expression of modern programs. The first step in such a rethinking may be that a person feels the true value of a particular social phenomena, and in his imagination will allow him to be cleansed of conventions. The car is a source of physical freedom, providing ease of movement. Perhaps in the future, along with this technological tool, people will be able to use the abilities of their own body, which allows them to teleport and levitate. However, approaching this issue creatively, people who have shown their potential will begin to consider the products of civilization as a source of additional diversity, so the car can also take a worthy place among the means of transportation. In the best case, such transport will reflect the individual needs of the person, and each will become the designer of his vehicle. Along with this, the person of the future can realize his intentions with the help of magic techniques, and influence remote events with the help of his own thought forms. In addition, in order to communicate with another person, it will be possible to use the energy connection that was previously created during physical communication. Therefore, people who have realized their energy capabilities will be able to communicate directly at the level of their energy bodies. Any physical actions will become methods of enhancing this emotional connection, and perhaps to meet at the level of feelings, a person will want to perform a dance activating remote contact. Thus, in the sphere of communication, the same many-sidedness can be manifested, which was considered on the example of the giving of flowers. In general, any social phenomenon represents only a point among the infinite number of other alternatives, with the help of which it is possible to realize a similar goal. Visualizing such fantastic, but desirable opportunities, a person will reveal the power of his creative potential, which at the time of transition can become its sensual basis. The second step in sensual liberation may consist in expanding the range of tools for transmitting the emotional state. In principle, any human action is intended to share its deep vibrations, but the mental matrix so narrows the spectrum of human manifestations that it does not allow the emotional body to act in the physical world. In the active phase of the transition, the programs of consciousness will be weakened, which means such an expansion will become real. Nevertheless, the tendency to expand the methods of emotional expressiveness can be outlined already now, and a person who is interested in his energetic abilities can start this process. The basis for this expansion can be a creative flow awakened in the course of dreams, and through imaginary images the energy body can tell in which direction a person wants to move the most. Dreaming about the best form of giving his emotions to his beloved, a man can experiment with this phenomenon and diversify it with new techniques. Perhaps, preparing for the next date, the lover will depict his emotions in the form of a bright pattern containing unusual shapes and shades. Such gifts can be a new form of transmission of inner experiences that will be a worthy alternative to flowers. Wanting to meet a friend, a person can invite him at the level of feelings, and then find out if this vibration has reached his energy body. Owing to an increase in emotional sensitivity, such experiments can give positive results, becoming a source of inspiration for improving energy abilities. In this case, the active phase of transition will become a support for people who have already shown interest in the subtle plan and are seeking to use the emerging susceptibility of energies in everyday life. The weakening of the pressure of the galactic fields can lead to a significant expansion of the options for the transfer of emotions, and also will allow you to put the desired vibration in each action. The reason is that the programs of consciousness will no longer be so tough and will leave a person a field for personal experiments. Since the person will be driven by his own interest, the basic programs based on fear will recede away and will not receive gain. Due to this, the active phase of transition can be a stage in the further convergence of the emotional and physical body of a person. The mental matrix will remain an observer in this interaction and will gradually adapt its information structures to the true needs of the person. At the same time, at the external level, a person will continue to use many previous programs, but since the methods of achieving the goal will vary in the course of a personal experiment, None of the programs will be rigidly fixed and will be able to change their parameters. The emotional body will take the place of the basis for the mental sheath, and if previously the basis for consciousness was basic programs, then during the transition it can give priority to the creative state, which is a natural and desirable form of existence for each person. A creative approach can also manifest itself at the level of a biological body, and the diversity and depth of energy vibrations will help to remove tight blockages from physiological processes by running them in a new direction. This will be supported by a change of reference points on the mental plane, and since the basic programs lose their dominant position, the instincts that are their manifestation at the level of biological processes will also be weakened. Looking for the desired hints, the physical body will turn to the emotional plan, because it is there that it will feel the vibrations close to itself. In the course of deep interaction with the emotional envelope, the biological body can start the process of its transformation and will begin to be freed from genetic limitations. This is how the process of renewing the mental matrix and the structure of the physical body can begin, the support for which will be the awakening of the emotional sheath. This trend will allow a person to restore the abilities that were characteristic of people in a fabulous time, when they were directly connected with the deep vibrations of the planet. Human creativity is precisely its internal source of energy, at the level of which it is one with the energy center of the planet Earth. During the transition period, the carrier of the source can become the very energy body of a person, which, having tuned into the desired wave, will restore interconnection with the original vibrations of the planet. Resonance between the personal energy center of a person and the planetary source of terrestrial frequencies can provide further unfolding of human potential. If such a tendency manifests itself in the lives of many people, then the whole modern system will transform, and the programs of the four-dimensional matrix will finally adapt to the needs of Earthlings. In this case, this information grid will become a worthy intermediary between the Earth and the forces of the galaxy, allowing to adapt the demands of the hierarchy to the life of people. Best regards, Guardian.